Okay, this is our dining area where we're going to have a table. These benches will have cushions on the seats. Something like that, but that's not one of them. And we bought 4 of these little chairs. Incredibly cheap. I don't know how they make them and ship them and sell them at a profit. Their finished work is not too bad. And they're marginally comfortable. And I want to build a table where the seats stow under the table. Because a little progress on my table. Of course, the height is standard height, 30 inches. The length of this part is dictated by the chairs that we bought, that we want to store them under the table. It's going to be 4 of them. So that's this length. 4 of them takes 12 inches. So I made 13 inches between the legs so it wouldn't be too tight. And then the width should be 15 inches of knee space between your knees and the edge of the table. And I got 14, close to it, because this is a boat. Everything's shrunk up on a boat. So that determines the size of the main part of the table. These chairs, of course it's upside down, so there'll be a shelf here which these chairs will sit on, all 4 of the chairs. And I think I'll put slats to keep them from falling out instead of a solid wall. There'll be a good sized leaf on each end of the table that will be folded down most of the time, but when there's a lot of people, we'll fold them up, take the chairs out. It's a little update on the table. I have the mortise and tenon joints cut. They're not glued. I'm holding everything together with straps. And this is how the chairs, they'll fit underneath. I probably need a solid bottom here. Typically, table legs are further out, but half of this goes in the boat against the bench seat. And when you have bench seats, you can't get in and out with a leg here, unless you're like 5 years old or younger. So I moved the legs in, and I now have an acceptable overhang where you can sit comfortably. It's a little less than standard, but it's okay. It's a boat. Everything's smaller in a boat. The problem I have now is it's not really stable because the legs are close together. I think if somebody were to lean on it, it could tip. So that's not good. So I'm kind of thinking of, where's my board? Of adding a spreader, or I don't know what that would be called. Fixing this to the legs, which would help. If I do this, I got to cut the top down to keep the table height. I have this on my table in my boat, my other boat, and it's a trip hazard because these fold down so the legs are sticking out past the top, and it's a pain in the rear. But on this table, that shouldn't be a problem because this is rigid, this is fixed. Shouldn't be a trip hazard. You know, it's a little awkward with the chairs, but we can deal with that. So I'm pretty sure before I go any further, I'm going to recut this to put a spreader on the bottom, and then I'll have to recut these joints so I can lower the top accordingly, and we'll move forward. So I got the hardest glue up done. That's the first one to me. I don't think I could do a bunch of pieces at the same time. This cypress is really soft, and it's hard to make a clean, accurate joint that will align itself up. Not that I've ever made a clean, accurate joint in any kind of wood, but it's worse than the cypress, so I depend a great deal on thickened epoxy to make my joints strong and fit correctly. So these 2 glue ups are done, thickened epoxy. Stuff cures really slow. It'll be tomorrow before I can take the clamps off and proceed. Yesterday I glued the bottom stretchers, I would guess you'd call them, to the legs. and the epoxy that I have bought recently, which is this stuff. Man, at least all day before it cures. Now it cures and it's good, or appears to be good, but it's not fast, so I got to kind of schedule my work around this. But I think I'm going to go ahead and glue the top stringers in right now, and it'll have to just sit all day long. But while that's drying, I can make the little slats here to keep the chairs from falling out. I can make the base that's going to go here, that's going to support the chairs, and I can start working on whatever wood I decide to use to cover the top. Right now it's just a sheet of plywood, but it'll have something pretty on top of it. Okay, top stringers are glued. This was easier, or made easier, because the first thing I did was clamp this piece of plywood down here, and I got the spacing on the legs correct, and I got them plumb with a framing square. Kind of tapped them around until I liked it, and then tightened these real tight, so that kind of kept everything square, and that allowed these to drop in. And checked them and everything's good. Another thing I did, I sprayed these joints with lacquer before, just Home Depot spray lacquer, before I glue. Not the inside of the joints, but the outside. That lacquer dries on the surface really fast, where glue tends to soak in. So you spray with lacquer when everything's dry, it sands up so much quicker, because the penetration depth is minimal. The lacquer kind of protects the wood from the glue. So spend the rest of the day making a bottom and making sides. This is done for the day. This epoxy will be still soft this afternoon, unfortunately. I've got the 6 strips sanded and ready to go on. They're going to go on the inside of here to keep the chairs from falling out. And I've got the 2 legs cut. They're ready to go on the bottom. They go crossways to get some stability sideways. Over here I've glued up some boards for the bottom. They'll sit on here. The top, I have 2 of the 3 glue ups done. I can unclamp them. They were clamped yesterday. I wanted to use the old cypress because it was prettier, but I got lazy and I'm using the new cypress, which I have lots of. It's almost as nice, just not quite. Originally I had cut the plywood for this leaf that's going to fold right here and go straight down, 24 inches. That's really not too practical, because I think if somebody was leaning on it real hard, the table could flip up. So if I make it 12, like the sides, you can't hardly flip it up, so that would be safe. 15 to 18 is ideal, so if I go 14, if I go 16, it's pretty sturdy. You'd almost have to sit on it to flip it up. So I think I'm going to go 15 inches. I'm going to make the ends 15 inches. And that's just what they're going to be. These are the glue ups for the tabletop. It's cypress, and I got 3 pieces, which is more than enough width to cover the top. And I've been messing with the top over here. This piece of wood is the joint between the top and the fold up leaf, and there's one identical on that end, and it's all glued like it's one piece right now, the 3 tops, the top and the 2 leaves. And I'm going to leave them like that and glue these cypress panels, all make one big piece, and then cut it up with the scale saw. That way the grain will line up from leaf to top to leaf. I'm going to run a band around the exterior because I don't want the plywood showing. And on the corners, I'm going to round the corners a little bit because it's a boat, and boats should have rounded corners. And so I glued a solid block in each corner, so when I round the corner, I won't expose any plywood. I don't want any plywood to show. Yesterday we glued the first finished board down to the plywood sub base, relying on my flat work table to keep everything flat. I was able to clamp the ends, but in the middle I just used gravity clamps. If I wouldn't have put the plastic down, I have a feeling that my plywood would have gotten glued down to the finished surface because there was some cracks and stuff. So we'll take the weights off and see what it looks like. Okay, first strip down the middle is glued down. It feels really good. We did have some squeeze out with the glue, so it's a good thing we put the plastic down. Before I glue this strip, I'm gonna go ahead and cut all these corners, round them off, try to protect little children's heads. Around them and sand them, and I'm gonna glue another strip. I glued the wood panels on top of the plywood with epoxy glue. Yellow glue is easier, but yellow glue requires a lot of clamping pressure, and it's pretty hard to get good clamping pressure when you're dealing with big areas like this. So even though I put a bunch of hundreds of pounds of weight on top of it, if you figure out how many square inches you're talking about, it's really not that much per square inch. So went with epoxy. Probably would have been better to do the plywood and the bottom of the cypress, but we didn't do that. I did go around the perimeter and put an extra thick layer of epoxy around the perimeter. And then we I set the board into the epoxy and put a couple of clamps on each end just to keep it from scooching around too much. And I was able to get some long clamps and pull the two pieces of cypress together tightly. Then went with a hammer and kind of whacked them just to make sure it was sitting flat. And then we covered it with plastic again to make sure that none of the glue squeezed out a knot hole, and glued down one of the the plywood that the weight. If you ever use this plastic wrap stuff on a project, absolutely do not cut the end with anything sharp like a pair of scissors, because it will take you a month to find the end again when you're ready to use it again. It's so thin. Then we put the weights on it, and that blue bucket has bottom paint. I could hardly pick it up. The boxes have full 5-gallon buckets in them, so they're heavy. And some of the other was just random weights. And I was able to put clamps on all the way around the perimeter. On the edges, I could put clamps, so the edges are really good, and it went well. This stuff sets real slow, so I got all the time in the world. Just brush it on, keep throwing the brush bristles away because the brush was falling apart. But let it set overnight, and tomorrow we'll do the same with the last panel. Okay, the third section of tabletop is glued. The glue is dry, so I need to put all this crap away, and I'll give it a preliminary sanding before I start working on trimming the edge back to the proper size. This glue is really funny. I put it on yesterday morning, 8 o'clock, about. It got up to 65 yesterday. It was bright and sunshiny all day long. As of about 5:30 in the afternoon, it's still sticky. Like, you think, oh my god, I mixed it wrong, it's not going to cure. And then last night it gets down into upper 40s, maybe 50, whereas you would think it would cure not at all. And you get up this morning and it's hard as a rock. This is just some really different stuff. I don't really like it, but I got 2 gallons of it, so there. Yeah, we got the perimeter trimmed. I just used the skill saw to get close, and then the hand power planer to get closer, and the belt sander to kind of clean it up. And I have marked the cut lines to separate the top from the from the fold up leaves, and I'm getting ready to cut them. So I hope my hands are steadier this morning than normal. So the top's all trimmed up, and I've cut the leaves so that they can fold separate from the top. The other one's cut too. So put the top on, screwed it down, put a chair up here, sat in a chair and leaned on the top, and it is pretty stable. It got better when I put a shim under each end of the leg. It was kind of teeter-tottering on the middle of this leg. I put my bride up there, and she says it's too tall, and it is about an inch above standard. So I need to make it a little shorter, which will make it even more stable because there'll be less of a moment. But it's kind of tough at this point. So I think I'm gonna run this through the table saw and take a 1/2 inch off of here. And I'm gonna have to take a 1/2 inch off the bottom of the legs, and I've already got a mortise on there, so that's gonna be a little complicated, but I'll do it. So with the table set up temporarily and the chair, the Admiral had a seat, and she decided that it was too tall, and it was about an inch higher than normal. So I ran this top stringer through the table saw, cut a 1/2 inch off the top, and then on the bottom I raised the edge of this tenon a 1/2 inch, and I made a new stretcher for the bottom. I made it a couple inches wider on each side just because I got kind of wussy about it tupping over. And this was a little bit springy. The cypress is real soft, so I laminated it, and in the middle lamination is some heart pine, which is super strong. So I'll cut these out today, and I may make the profile, it's a little wider, maybe a little shorter, to further reduce the height of the table. These were my original prototype legs, and these are the final finished legs. They're a little bit wider, a couple inches on each side, and I laminated them with a piece of heart pine in the middle. I just wanted some more rigidity. These just, I don't know, they just seem to be too bouncy. And I routed out the middle so that they only touch on the far end. So I'm going to go ahead and carry the thing up the ladder with the legs on it to make sure it would fit through the door, and it will. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these on. This will be a final deal. They're all sanded and everything. These are the holes where I had the top mounted, and after that I cut a 1/2 inch off of this to lower the top a little bit. I'm going to plug those with wood so I don't accidentally put a screw in one of those old holes, because if I do, it's going to come all the way through the top. So I need to make new holes, not quite as deep. I need to plug those so I don't screw up. Okay, I made some progress on the table. I got the stretchers or the legs at the bottom attached permanently. The tabletop is installed. I'll probably have to take it off to get it in the boat. At least I'm absolutely positive of it. And the leaves I attached with a hinge. I had a piano hinge, so I attached them with this piano hinge, and then I put some Home Depot drawer glides and a little pull-out thing, and I'm hoping this will hold the leaf up. I haven't flipped it over yet to tell if it's going to work. I'm getting ready to turn the table right side up for the first time and see how these work. Heavy. It looks good. This end is sagged down a little bit. I think both ends sag down a little bit, so I'm gonna have to put some kind of wedge or something, kind of tighten this up. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work well until I get some more manly drawer glides. These are supposedly full extension, but they're 14 inches and they have a ½ inch of play. So I'll go Monday to the cabin shop and get some tougher drawer glides. I'm getting a little out of schedule here. I haven't figured out how to hold the leaves up, the table leaves up yet to my satisfaction, but the weather is perfect. So I brought the 3 pieces of the top outside. I'm going to go ahead and put some varnish on it this week. And it will, it also protects it from getting banged around when I'm working on them. So I gave up on the pull-out leaf support. I just couldn't figure out a way to get the play out of it. Because even the heavy-duty drawer glides that'll hold 100 pounds, they still have bounce that, you know, you can sit on it, it's not going to break, but nobody wants the leaf to be bouncing. So I'm going to go this route. I've got these things cut. I'm going to hinge them so they fold back and they fold out of the way. This is cypress, so it's a little soft, so I'm concerned about holding the screws. So I ordered a wider than normal piano hinge where I could get the screws back a little bit. And I'm going to set in a piece of hardwood on the back side so the screws will go through the soft cypress and catch something substantial. So the construction of the table is complete. Still need a little varnish work. I got away from the drawer glide method of holding up the leaves on the end. I just couldn't get them to be rigid enough. I went kind of more traditional with these little swing out deals. So they just swing out like so. They're real simple and they're real strong. What we're going to do now is show off a little bit and crank my table down so that I can get up there and sand and varnish the top. I've got 3 coats on the top. I'm going to put 1 more and then I'll unscrew the top and bring it into the boat. Last coat. It'll dry satin, it won't dry that shiny, but table's in the boat with both leaves open. 4 chairs, 1 on this end and 3 on this side. I think might work pretty good, and then we could scoot it to this wall a little more, or we can push it back to the back of the boat, swing one of these chairs over on this end. Either way, plenty of room. Can't have a table too big in a boat, because as soon as people walk in the door they start putting stuff down. Bags of chips, soft drinks, swim bags of towels and all that kind of stuff. So the table's big, but there's no better use of the floor space than a table. And here is the table with the leaves down and the chairs stowed up underneath. We're almost through with this boat.